Penn State is going to be playing host to their playoff matchup against SMU. SMU is coming off a devastating loss to Clemson in the ACC championship. They rallied from 17 down. They tied the game up just to blow it in the final 16 seconds with a big kickoff return and a game-winning field goal. And Penn State, to their credit, played really well against Oregon in the Big Ten title game. That was probably the best game that I've ever seen them play in the big game of that magnitude, with James Franklin and Drew Aller at the helm at quarterback. So in this game, I'm expecting for Penn State to roll. I don't really see this being a tightly contested game because, for one, Penn State's defensive line is going to cause a lot of headaches for SMU's offense, because in the first half of that ACC championship game, it looked like SMU didn't even belong on the same field as what Clemson was on, because it was just a big discrepancy in terms of their offensive line against Clemson's defensive line, and Clemson's defensive line was just overwhelming them. Now, as the game continued on, SMU started to get a little bit of rhythm offensively, and they started to get hot, and that's the kind of team that SMU is. You know, when they can get hot early, they can put up a lot of points, and they can do it in bunches. Rhett Lashlee, not only is he a fantastic head coach, but he's one of the better offensive minds in all of college football. He has really good schemes. He gets the most out of his players. But the thing with SMU is that they tend to beat themselves more times than not. They have games when they just have hella turnovers. You got guys dropping easy passes, similar to what we saw against Clemson in the ACC championship. I feel like the game that SMU played against Clemson, we saw the best and the worst of this team. When you're going up against a team like Penn State that's way better than Clemson, your margin for error is incredibly small. You're not going to be able to win this game by having like 2 and 3 turnovers. If anything, Kevin Jennings has to play completely flawless in a game like this, because Penn State, not only do they have an offense that can beat you a multitude of different ways, they can beat you on the ground with Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton, but they also can carve you up through the air with that monster at tight end, number 44, Tyler Warren. And SMU defensively, their strength is them being able to defend the run. They have the 10th best run defense in all of college football. They're top 10 in rushing yards per game allowed. They also got a really good pass rush as well. They're 10th in sacks per game, but their weakness is their secondary. They're 94th in passing yards per game allowed, and this is a secondary that last week gave up 4 touchdowns to Cade Klubnik and company. So if you were struggling to slow down Clemson's passing attack, I can only imagine what Tyler Warren and Drew Aller are going to do to you. And Drew Aller, he's one of those quarterbacks that when he's playing his best football, he looks like the best quarterback in college football. But he does have times when, you know, he does have a couple of weird turnovers, a couple of weird interceptions that just make you scratch your head and say, you know, is Drew Aller actually good, or is this dude a little bit overhyped? But when you're going up against SMU defense that has just surrendered so many yards through the air, I see Drew Aller having one of those games where he probably throws around 3 to 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and we're probably going to see one of his better games of the year. For SMU, you really got to get that pass rush going. You have the ability to get after Drew Aller. You do have a few formidable pass rushers on your defensive line. The thing with SMU is that compared to the teams like Boise State and Arizona State and Indiana, the squads that most people feel wouldn't really be in here if Alabama or Ole Miss handled business, is that SMU actually does have a few NFL bodies on their defensive line. You know, number 5, one of their starting defensive tackles, he's pretty big. He moves pretty well. I think that SMU can give Penn State's offense a little bit of trouble in terms of them being able to run the football, because SMU does have a really good run defense. They are 8th in rushing yards per game allowed, and they held a really good Clemson running back in Phil Maffa to under 100 yards. And Clemson had a combined total of 64 rushing yards in that ACC title game. So SMU defensively, I don't worry about them up front. I'm more so worried about how good are they going to be on the back end. And the biggest weakness that Penn State has had this season is they don't really have a lot of elite players on the perimeter. They don't really have a lot of good receivers that are good at creating separation. But Harrison Wallace, it looks like he has started to become that go-to guy outside of their running backs and outside of Tyler Warren, because he had a really good game. He came on strong in the fourth quarter. And with the inconsistencies that SMU has had in that secondary this year, I don't really see the lack of elite perimeter talent really being that much cause for concern for Penn State. And honestly, SMU offensively, they got to be able to at least get the 27 points if they want to have a shot at winning this game, because I have no question that Penn State is going to at least put up 30 on this SMU defense. I question if SMU can keep up, because this isn't Clemson that you're playing. You're not going to be able to get down early in this game and find a way to make it a close game. If you get down against Penn State, it pretty much is all she wrote. So SMU offensively, what have they been good at this year when they've been playing their best? Well, they are really good at generating a lot of explosive plays. This is a fast offense. They got a lot of speed at running back and at wide receiver. They are 13th in America in yards per pass at 8.6. They're pretty efficient as well. They're 22nd and third down conversion percentage, and they average 8 points per game. And as good as what Penn State's defense is, because they do have a lot of monsters on that defense, like when you watch Penn State defensively, some of those guys that they have on that defensive line, like Abdul Carter, don't even look like they're freaking human. These look like guys who are mutants that you would see on an X-Men movie or something like that. But SMU, if they can play the same way they did up front the second half against Clemson in this game, then I can see them being able to put up 28, 30 points and being able to keep this a competitive game. But it's just hard for me to see that happening with how much talent Penn State just has all across the board defensively. They got a lot of good corners. They got good safeties. Their front seven is stout. SMU really has to play their best football. And the thing that gives SMU in trouble more times than not is they just beat themselves. Kevin Jennings is really good when he's on, really good dual threat quarterback, but he just has moments where he just can't take care of the football. And I know that, it's cliche to say that the team who takes care of the football has the best chance to win, but Penn State, they can still win this game even if they do have 2-3 turnovers. They're talented enough to be able to overcome that. SMU, on the other hand, they're not. So if SMU is going to win this thing, or if they're even going to be able to keep this close, they have to be able to take care of that football. And it's easier said than done when you're going up against a Penn State defense that is 12th against the pass and 11th against the run, and you're led by this freak in Abdul Carter. So I like Penn State to win. 42-10 is going to be my final score prediction in this game. I don't really expect this game to be close at all. I feel like by the time we get into midway through the second quarter, Penn State is probably going to be up at least by 2-3 touchdowns, because Clemson was just driving up and down the field with ease. And it was really shocking to see SMU just all of a sudden get back into the ball game. But Penn State, they just have so much on the line of scrimmage that it just makes it hard to see SMU being able to sustain too much offense, because, their defensive line is just full of freaks, full of uber athletic guys, and they were able to keep up with Oregon. And Oregon has pretty much the most talented team in college football this year. So if Penn State can keep up with Oregon, then I doubt that SMU is going to be able to hang around with Penn State, but this is college football. A lot of upsets have happened this year, and there is going to be at least one team this year in these first-round playoff matchups that ends up getting an upset, but I don't see one of those being Penn State.